Okay, so there is something on Twitter, a post from one of these accounts that feels like a Hotep account, but I'm not sure if it's like real or anything. I don't know. But it is one of the notable activists in the Black community, Black American history, Nikki Giovanni. And they were having one of those famous clips with Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin, and they were talking about relationships, right? And it was a whole thing because it was like, oh, they're gay in real life, and da 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 da, you know. Well, the person then posted, kind of like a side eye moment, kind of like a gotcha moment. They're talking about black love and black this and black that. And Nikki Giovanni, she just passed away recently, rest in peace. And they showed her wife, and she was a white woman. So, do you know who James Baldwin, his lover, he also was a white man? And even Rustin, somebody who worked close with Dr. Martin Luther King to do a lot of other influential things within that era. I believe it was a Netflix movie with him. And he also happened to be with a white person. Oh, and I was looking, and it turns out, yeah, Frederick Douglass also happened to be with a white woman. And Frederick Douglass' case is very interesting because he basically was with a black woman. A black woman helped him escape, right? They escaped together. They were married. They had a whole thing. And then he had, like, I guess he left her. And then towards the end of his life, towards the end of Frederick's life, or I guess the closing chapter of his life, he decided to be with a white woman that was 20 years younger than him. And that was who he died with. Yeah. You also see in many other ways, I was looking at Malcolm X, and they said Malcolm X was with a white woman. And in Malcolm X's memoir, he revealed that during his time, it was a status symbol for black men to end up parading white women around, right? It was a status symbol, in the city. If you got a white woman, you're hot shit, so on and so forth. I also saw something, I didn't really look into it, about how it was probably a tabloid, but how his wife wasn't being pleased in bed, his black wife. So I was like, okay. And then there's also this whole thing about maybe him being bisexual. We know, who knows? It's a whole thing. There's also allegations that Martin Luther King was with white women, and then so on and so forth and so on and so forth. What am I trying to say? Um, just like my last video, we're talking about, the divesting movement. I was sitting there talking about how a lot of the people that were leading this particular type of movement are not people who are black women. There are a lot of black women that have said on their timeline, but in reality, historically, even with, Nikki Giovanni, yes, she is a black woman, but it has always been people who are, black men, right? And then it was black women. And it's very interesting because if you look at the Democrats, a lot of them are pro-black, pro this, and they end up with white people. They have white partners. Now, you could have a white partner, right? It's not something that is illegal, right? Things have changed, we progressed. But it's just so very interesting that even in spaces where it's supposedly pro-black, people cannot find people who are, black. People cannot find people who are a part of their own community to live their lives with, to have children with, to have any romance with. There's always somebody who happens to be white, right? Not even another person of color. It happens to be the very person that you spend your whole career critiquing. And I don't even understand how we got there. Now, there were some people under the Nikki Giovanni photo that were sitting there saying, well, you guys don't understand, where you have to understand in black intellectual spaces, there's a lot of other black intellectuals that do not want to go with each other, because you have to understand that certain black intellectuals can only find relationships with people who are Caucasian, or maybe they're in spaces, or high academia is filled to the brim with white faces. And so you can't possibly find somebody who is a black person or who is a person of color in that space. So you just so happen to live with who you live with and do what you do with. And of course, that whole thing about being queer and how being a queer person is such a small demographic that a lot of people are not going to find you, or a lot of people that you find end up being somebody who, is Caucasian, because it's such a, small demographic. And I just find that to be bullshit. While that was on my timeline, there was also other stuff about, there was this clip, how they have a footage of football players after the game with their loved ones. And there was a lot of black people that was commenting saying, I don't know how to feel about it, but it's kind of getting out of hand, where you have all of these black football players and they have white woman partners, right? And we have mixed kids. And it's just interesting because, again, you can love who you love, be with who you be with, but it's never anybody else. Right? It's always a white person. That, with the persistence and the documentation of anti-blackness that you see within multiple cultures around the world, multiple people around, not just the Europeans, multiple people around the world have racist practices. It is in Japanese culture that they've had this particular type of thing where if you were someone who was of fair skin, right? If you were somebody who had lighter skin, you were royalty. You were somebody who was damn near a deity, right? If you were somebody who was of darker skin, that means you were working out in the fields. You were working out in different places, in different parts of the world, where if you were out in the field, you were out in certain areas in the sun, you were basically low class, you were basically somebody who, feel, as they would say. And so that means that having darker skin will give this idea of somebody who doesn't have any sense of worth or who is not as worthy. So you want to have fairer skin in order to be somebody who is of high status. And that permeates so many different things that we see within our society. And so it's very sad and it's frustrating because, yes, you have to let people be who they want to be with. And yes, you can't dictate how people want to be with who they want to be with. Love is love. But it's very, very interesting, though. It's very interesting that history that still persists to this day, paired with so many people who still have this thing within their mind where they idolize whiteness. And there's so many people that get angry. So many people that say, oh, why does it matter? Oh, you guys are doing too much. Happen to be the very people that you're talking about. So many people that are like, oh, why does it matter? You look at their page, you look at their history, they happen to be with a white partner. And so it never fails. It never fails. I think it's just a very unfortunate reality. We need to bring back black love. We need to bring back actual multiculturalism. I've said this in so many other films that I've seen and about so many other TV shows that I've seen and other things I've seen in the media, that multiculturalism isn't just a white person and a person of color. That is not the full extent of what multiculturalism is. That is still intentionally or unintentionally uplifting whiteness. That is still white supremacy. And people are going to think that's not, because we have so many people in America still to this day that are having temper tantrums because of forced diversity, right? Or blackfishing or whitewashing, or there's so many different things going on, right? In this age of media. But you have a person of color that decides that they're going to be with a white person. I say this to my straight brothers and sisters all the time because they never want to believe me, because, Obama didn't get the black folks out the hood. He instead gave the sissies marriage. And so, that's every gay person's problem. But when you have the inclusivity of being black and also being queer, there is a reality of that same white supremacy that you see within your own media in the heterosexual world. It is also seen within the gay media as well. Every single movie, every single one. Now, we have films like Queer where we have two white men who are gay. We have plenty of films that are artistic, they're very coming of age, they have the A24-esque thing going on. There's a plethora of that. But when we have two people of color who decide to be in relationships together, who are gay and things like that, we can't fund movies like that. We can't do that because there's not enough gay, queer, gay, black people around. There's not enough people in that particular type of minority. So we can't tap into that, right? And so there is always this prioritization, especially in the West, of whiteness, even when we're sitting there trying to be diverse. And that's something that needs to change. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.